Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about handling advice. This is when people tell you how to do something. People love to dispense advice, by the way. Now, I'm not talking about criticism. Criticism is when people want to talk about what you did, whether it's a method you used in your development of a game, say, or they want to talk about the game itself, what they think about the game. That's criticism. I have a whole video on how to receive criticism. I'll link it below. I'm talking about what to do when people try to give you advice. Advice is not criticism. Criticism is on the what you did. Advice is when people tell you how you should do something. I will start off by saying I love getting advice, especially if the person has more experience in it than me. Then I tend to shut up and listen. However, I will take advice from anybody with any experience because I've learned a lot from people who have experience in something tangential, or they had a little bit of experience in something that I had more experience, but their little bit was in a different part, so it added to what I knew. I especially like asking questions when people give me advice. Like, what did you do when the circumstances were a little different? Or did you try using different methods before you used that one? Or what outcomes have you gotten? Have you used this method several times and have you gotten different outcomes from it? And if so, what do you think caused that? Because what I love about it is when people are giving advice from experience, they not only can answer those questions, they love answering those questions. But then there are another group of people. These are people who love to give advice but have no experience. I'm not talking low experience. I'm talking no experience. I've gotten programming advice from non-programmers. For all the programmers out there, I'm just talking to you for a second. You probably have had this happen and you know what I'm talking about. Probably don't have to go into details there. I will later for the rest of you. I've also received frequent business advice from people who have never in their life run a business. They usually think it's common sense or, well, it should be this way because I really think so. And then they've never done it. And it's frustrating because they often start from a starting point that's just not correct. Like, no, that's not how you incorporate a business, or no, that's not how a contract foundation is. And of course, frequently in my career, I get a game development advice from non-game developers, both people who are in the industry but aren't game developers, and of course lots of people outside the game industry. What I want to be clear is I'm not talking about people saying, I don't like this, or I don't like your game, or I wish your game had been more like this, or I wish your game didn't do this. That's all critique. And that's all handled in my, how to give or how to receive criticism. In fact, I also have videos on how to give good feedback and why that feedback should include context. And those links are below as well. What I'm talking about is advice about what you should have done, not what you did, but how you should have done it. Frequently, this advice comes packaged as, why don't you just do this? Or have you just tried this? Now, I mentioned before how much I hate phrases that have that word just in them because it's just, see what I did there? It's just often presaging the worst advice ever. Frequently, something that isn't even applicable to what you're trying to do. This person just knows something. They heard something somewhere once, and they're like, why don't you just do this? Here's why I'll give you a programming example, because this has happened to me. And I wish I could say it's only happened once, but it's happened twice that I remember. And I'm sure it's happened more than that. Had a situation where there was I'm not sure it was an array. Let's just say there was a container. There was a container full of data, and it needed to be sorted. And the non-programmer who was in, just, what you doing? And I told him, he's like, why don't you just use the built-in sort operator? Because, if you use anything like the standard template library or any other library that provides a bunch of containers, it often has built-in operators that work on them, and sort is often one of those built-in operators. But here's why that just makes a lot of programmers like me just go, ugh. First of all, how do I explain to this person who has never coded a day in their life what's wrong with what they just suggested? How do I explain how different sort routines work? How do I explain that to somebody who doesn't know any sort routine, how the built-in sort routine is quicksort, which they don't know about or care about? But how do I explain to them, hey, at this point, the data is already mostly sorted, so quicksort is the absolute worst routine to run on it. It's like the worst thing you could do is run that built-in. Yes, I could try to educate the person who told me that. And sometimes I have. I almost said frequently, but I'm just saying I know sometimes I've gone, well, no, here's why. And I've walked through it and said, no, there are different sorts work. But often when this is happening, time's of the essence. Maybe they've held up a build until I fix this. Maybe this is the last thing I need to do before I go home. And this person's just sitting there and they think they're dispensing good advice, but their advice isn't even applicable. It's like, just stop. And also, the next time a problem like this arises, even if I had spent all that time trying to educate them on what the problem is, the next time a similar problem arises, they do it again. Once again, they go, why don't you just do this? And I've had that happen where I'm like, we've had this discussion. And then the person goes, well, I'm not a programmer. That's why what I'm saying is getting advice, especially from people who have no experience, it's really hard to react to it. Because what I've learned is, for them, there's only two reactions they can perceive from you. If you have a light touch reaction, which means you're questioning them, but they're very banal questions, very, very light touch questions is what I call them. They seem oblivious to what's going on. For example, you can go, oh, what did you use what sort did you use on a situation like this? Or when did you code something like this? And they go, oh, well, I didn't. But I read that if you just blah, 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 blah. Basically, what I've learned is some people lack a certain kind of self-reflection that helps them realize that you aren't questioning their suggestion. You're questioning the fact that their experience, which is not low, but zero, means they have no way of even knowing if their advice is applicable. So thanks, but your advice may not be applicable, much less good. So they're not only wasting your time, but they're clogging up your bandwidth with stuff that isn't even applicable. And it's frustrating because they don't seem to be able to see that. Which then gets you into, you cross a threshold where you start to question them more strongly. Well, wait, you've never done this? Wait, why are you suggesting that if you don't even know what a different sort algorithm is? Then they get angry. F you, man, you just think you're so smart. Suddenly you're the bad guy. Because they didn't understand when you tried the light approach. It went right over their head. So then you get the heavy approach and they're like, ah. And I've worked with many people like this. Many, many people. Light touch is ignored. Then heavy touch results in anger. There is no medium with them because it's too light until it's heavy. And let me just tell you, working with people like that is freaking exhausting. It is just exhausting. And I've tried to reason with them. But they often reply with, hey man, this is how my brain works. You got to accommodate me. So I often reply back and go, then accommodate me. When you come in and I tell you I'm busy and can you please back off because I'm trying to fix something, figure that out and back off. Because it's not fair for you to say, I didn't accommodate you when you didn't accommodate me. And that's what I'm always saying. I've sometimes worked with people and they think accommodation is all to them. They don't have to accommodate anybody. They just have to be accommodated. There's one other one that's really common that the person, we go through all this, light touch, heavy touch, all this, HR threats. The person just usually says this to me. I hear this a lot. I hear this in person. I hear this online. It's a phrase somewhat similar to this one. I don't need to be a chef to critique food. And you're right. That you're right. But what you don't seem to understand is you've gone way past critiquing. You aren't even suggesting you want a different outcome. What you're doing is you're suggesting a different method that the chef is supposed to use to get those outcomes. And you have no experience. This is like being in a restaurant and you order a well done steak and it comes out pink in the middle. You can say, this isn't what I don't like this. Or and look, it's pink in the middle and I wanted it well done. You can say that. But if you start saying, look, you need to send this back to the chef, and what he needs to do is, first of all, this should be a dry brine steak. And if he hasn't dry brined it, tell him to go in the back and get one that is dry brined. I know you got one back there. If he knows he's worth the salt, he knows they're doing. The worth the salt. See what I did there? And then he's got to sous vide it. Okay? Because that's what you do first of all. You got to sous vide the steak. Then he take it out. I just want him to kiss the grill with it. Get a little browning on, bring it out. Okay? That is not critiquing. That is someone giving advice to a chef who has zero experience being a chef. That's what's frustrating. It's super frustrating when people do that. And for many people, me even saying this is going way too far. It's like, hey man, you went too far. I've cooked a little. You're not a chef. You've never been a chef in a restaurant, but you're giving advice to a chef in a restaurant. You don't realize you've gone too far until I push back so hard that now you're angry at me for pushing back. I always like to end these on a positive note, so let me just sum up. Here's how I've handled advice from people. I think you should do this too. If the people have any experience whatsoever, listen. If there's any bit that's applicable, do it. If it's not applicable, light touch. Light touch. Well, have you done this before? What were the outcomes when you did this? If that doesn't work, if that doesn't stop the advice giving, then just say you need to get back to work. And if that doesn't work, heavy touch. When did you do this? Exactly what situations did you do this on? What kind of outcomes did you get? And when they get mad, which they will, you can tell them, hey man, I told you I need to get back to this, so don't go to the accommodation place. This is the best thing I've come up with in many decades. This is not a new problem. This is not something that's new to the business or even, I'm sure, unique to the game industry. But at some point, you just got to do your work. And the last thing you need is someone with absolutely no experience in that work telling you how you should do it. They can tell you they didn't like what came out the other end. But exactly how it got there, when they have no experience doing it, you kind of need to cut that off. Anyway, I hope this helps.